So when you watched this film recently, rewatched it after 20 years, how did it feel? Did it feel like a film by another person?
I felt exhausted, honestly. I felt exhausted because, in a way, Trigger, I haven't seen it in literally 20 years. And I don't know if that happened to you, but every scene, it was not about the scene itself. It was as it was about the things that I remember surrounded that scene around, and especially the problems and what it took to get there, and that in a way triggered me some kind of an anxiety attacks. But it was exciting, and at the same time, I was very shocked in the way I shot it. I mean, I would have never shot a film that way because it's very exhausting, and that's how I feel. It was between a little anxiety and a little bit about all of the amount of energy that it requires to shoot a film that way, which energy that I recognize I probably will not have today to do it. So it was a little exhausting, you know.
But didn't you have this thought, what possessed me to make as my first feature film such a big number? It's like, it's a huge, huge film, logistically difficult, formally, structurally, everything was a huge challenge, and you're a first time director.
Yeah.
You don't start with such films usually.
I think that in Mexico at that time, especially, your first film, always you knew that it could be your only film. Like most of the directors did one film.
Yeah.
And if you were super lucky, you did two in your life. First, because there was no money, nobody went to see any Mexican film at that time. It was a period that it was a very bad period for Mexican cinema for many, many, many years. So it was basically non-existent. So your first film normally was kind of in the mercy of the government, and then you just show it to your friends, and that. So in a way, there was an anxiety that runs that it was your only and possibly only opportunity to say something and to express yourself. So I think that has to do with that you want to include everything you wanted to say, theologically, politically, personally, all that thing. So there's that kind of thing. And at the same time, I was lucky to most of the people that work with me in this film, almost all of the head departments, from Rodrigo Prieto to Brigitte Brock in the production design, or Gabriela Diache, or Tita Lombardo. All this team, we have been working together for many years, doing commercials. I have a production company. So in a way, that complexity, it was a language that we have already established between us. So it was my first film, but definitely was not my first time in a set. And I think that combination was lucky for me.
And you had great cast, like really very uniquely brilliant and fitting actors, no? I mean, especially Gael, that was his first role, no, ever.
Yes, I saw Gael. I worked with him in a commercial, a little piece, that 20 seconds that I did for a radio station, and I saw his eyes. And I'm very fascinated sometimes by the eyes of the actors. I was trying to get to know them by just 10 minutes, right? And he was very kind of observant, and his eyes, in a way, were kind of purple in the screen. Kind of Elizabeth Taylor kind of thing, and it was like a young Alain Delon for me. He was like handsome but not too much, and it was very kind. I don't know. It was kind of a wolf face, and he was 18 years old or something like that. So his eyes were very deep, but his face was very little, like a kid. And it's funny, I said, if I do a film, I will do a film with this guy because I recognize the power that he has in it. And then he actually committed to be an actor. He went to London and he got it. And another thing that I felt very good about it was Emilio Echeverria, who plays the Chivo. I think is maybe the best actor ever in Mexico. I think he was another guy that I count with, that in a way I was lucky to have, because he's a theater actor. So he brought a lot of experience that with Gael was a nice combination, at the beginning and the end of the film, I think.
And were you aware when you were shooting it that you were making something rather extraordinary and rare? Because you said earlier that Mexican cinema was going through a bad patch. And did you realize that you were doing something unprecedented? Because it was unprecedented. I remember seeing it at Edinburgh Festival or somewhere, and it really hit you hard. And we'd never seen any Mexican films. We saw some Arturo Ripstein and all sorts of other things, but this was totally out of the blue. Were you aware you were breaking some mold?
I was not, in a way, saying, "Oh, I'm doing something special," at all. I mean, consciously, I knew that I was doing something very unique and challenging for me. And I have to confess that when I was in a way seeing the material, the dailies, I think we apply this skip bleach process that Mexico City light is very particular and very challenging because it's full of particles of, it's polluted.
Yeah.
And we are such in a high, we are 2.5 kilometers high altitude. So, and it's so polluted that there's no pristine light. Everything is always kind of hazy and gray, and there's no a lot of contrast. So in a way, it doesn't have the volume that you need. And when we apply this, because we did a lot of tests, Rodrigo and I work a lot in little commercials where we were rehearsing in those commercials, the handheld and this process. And the way the light and the volume and the colors behave beyond the film, I mean, beyond the story and the acting that I was just putting together pieces, it was coming in a very special way. And I knew by some moments that this film was I was fascinated by it personally. Not that, everybody will understand, but I was very happy that we were getting through the challenges of make a movie that look differently from what I have been watching, that I was not satisfied, that always look a little milky, or,
That helped a lot, no? The silver retention, the bleach bypass. That was an early decision, yeah?
It was a super early decision because it was that challenge that Mexico City too is, as you know, very concrete, but at the same time, there's a lot of colors in the architecture has a very personalized expression of the people with colors in the walls, and everybody paint their thing. So it's very baroque. I think it was a very good thing to get the X-ray and penetrate through that kind of milky thing that allow us to see the characters and the city and the context in a very beautiful way. I felt that way.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's a very, very punchy, dynamic, visceral film, and there's nothing more visceral than the dogfights, which are today even more shocking than 20 years ago. I think we've become more sensitive now.
The people, when we show the film, they went out of the theaters. I remember in Cannes, in the Semana de la Crítica, half of the screen theater went out. Some of them because they didn't like the film, maybe, but some of them because they felt. And in New York Times Film Festival, I remember that there was booze and like 20 people went out. I mean, it was sensitive stuff. And what I'm happy is that when they hit, you swear that they are fighting, but that's the art of cinema.
You showed it in Cannes first. That was the premiere, yeah?
The Critics Week, we were accepted, thankfully, to Jose Maria Riva, who was the director of the Critics Week, which, as you know, is a non-official section. And the funny anecdote is that we sent the film to Cannes, to the official selection. And there was, as they have these guys in every continent looking for the films that will be selected by different territories. And this guy who was the responsible for getting or to find the good Latin American films, when he saw it, he said, this film will not be accepted. I will not show it to the committee of selections. And we said, why? And he said, because it's too long, it's too violent, and Gilles Jacob will not be sitting 2 hours, 40 minutes in a film with this violence, and this timing doesn't work for Cannes. I said, well, can you just show it to them? Just for them to see? No. So the producers tried to went out to show it, and he threatened that if we do that, he will, boycott the film, or. And we sent it then to the Semana de la Crítica, and Jose Maria Rivas saw it and invited us, and we end up, fortunately, being the underdog, and we won. And it was the best thing it could have happened. Sometimes bad things, but anyway, it was a time that it was difficult for Latin American films to be shown in Cannes, to be honest. It was rare.
But what was the reaction? Okay, apart from people who left because of the violence, I mean, you saw it for the first time with an audience. It's a nerve-wracking thing in Cannes, no?
It's a nerve-wracking thing. I remember that I smoked like 2 packages of cigarettes. I went out because people was going out in the theater. I went to La Croisette. I remember watching the sea with my wife and smoking. And the funny anecdote is that after it finished, there was Bernardo Bertolucci was the president of the Semana de la Crítica, that Jose Maria Riva had invited him as the president. So he did a little lunch in a little restaurant in Cannes with 6 young directors that we were presenting our films in the Semana de la Crítica. And for me was, Bernardo Bertolucci. So I arrived late because that day my film was presenting. They were already in the middle of the thing. And I arrived all sweaty. And Bernardo said, what happened, Alejandro? I said, well, I feel so nervous, and it's so weird to show something that has been in your womb for so many months and then show it to the world. It's like, and I said to him, Bernardo, Mr. Maestro Bertolucci, I envy you so much being Bernardo Bertolucci. And now you know that you are Bertolucci and you present your film and you don't have to be nervous. And I remember that he was taking a little martini and he just stopped, finished his olive in the mouth, and he said, Alejandro, I'm sorry, you are wrong. I said, what do you mean I'm wrong? He said, from now on, every time will be even worse than this one. And I said, oh, come on. He said, yes, you will see. And it's true. He was right. I mean, you don't get confidence by being an experienced filmmaker. Actually, every film becomes more painful to share. And I remember that he was right about that. Anyway, that was my baptism of being warned about how difficult it is sometimes to have something so personal and then to show it. You know that very well.
Yeah, it's something. And also, you're less. You're more naive. You're less critical of yourself, I suppose. But you've gone. You've evolved interestingly, formally as well. Your films you've become a master of the developing shot now. Amores Perros, which is so dynamic handheld and everything. Now you've got these spectacular long shots. I don't know about your new film, but
yeah, I think I got super exhausted about the structure and the multiple storylines, and I started to get very tired after Babel and this way of shooting, right? That obviously I was. When I did, as you said, I think sometimes innocence is stronger than experience.
Yeah.
And I felt that in Amores Perros, that I was very lucky to have that innocence still vibrating, that you are not, you don't demand of yourself a lot. It's your first film, maybe the last one, who cares? Let's do this, and you are young. And just to do it is the reason to doing it. There's no philosophical things or aesthetical question. It's all that, but it's just because you have to do it. It's like you have to eat, you have to breathe. Then obviously I tried to develop this trilogy in these 3 next films with Guillermo Arriaga to really try to make this exercise of multiple stories that can convey in different scenarios without seeing each other, different structures, and it was fun to play, but it was it became a little bit intellectualized. And the way I was shooting things, with the classic master and then cut and 2 shot and single, the editing was exhausting. I remember I spent 8 months in my house editing Amores Perros, so the amount of choices I had, the way it could be infinite possibilities, it was overwhelming. And I decided to say, more rigor. more rigor. Let's direct much before I want to make decisions, even before I have the material in my editing room. And that's how I start. And that's why I wrote as an exercise of a one single character, Beautiful, which was extreme version. At least for me, it's a very traditional film, but for me, it was like one character in a single line chronologically. It was like, what? I don't know how to do it. Anyway, but that was a reason for me to attempt other things.
So the script of Amores Perros was quite, I imagine, quite different from the finished film, no? I mean, there's so many movable things in it.
Absolutely, I think the first draft that Guillermo had was like 215 pages or something like that. It will be like a 4-hour movie, like a 3.5 hour. And we keep working for 3 years, and I think it was great because Guillermo is a talented screenwriter, very astute, and we were for 3 years really questioning every single scene, how it plays with one and another, and I really thank him a lot because he was very unconditionally and very patiently. The demand that I have for every character, of things that I thought is how not only to reduce that to a 140 pages script, but what was essential, and the things to that. Now, saying that, when I start editing the film, as you said, in the editing room, a lot of things change. A lot of things. So I have a 3 hours, 15 minutes cut. And then you have to make tough choices. And in this kind of a structure, it's allowed to make choices that really you change time and things. So yeah, I discover a lot of things in the editing room. So yeah, it ended up being differently, but at the same time, spiritually, I think it contained the cell that we were trying to do it.
So it's like a big lesson, the film, yeah? You must have learned a lot.
I don't know if it happened to you, but when you work in a script, and again, you are throwing ideas and images, and everything is abstract. And it's a bunch of words in a very abstract thing. And when those words, in a way, hit reality and the physicality of filmmaking, they vanish. Yeah. So in a way, directing is to translate the emotions and the conflicts of human beings in images, and that is it sounds simple, but in a way, I think what I learned is that I was very happy after 3 years working and hard work of Guillermo and me getting this to be ready. I felt very safe. But once I start rehearsing,
yeah,
and see that some things that I have it in my mind perfectly and say, oh, this is beautiful, it didn't work. So behind that text, it was the subtext, what it should not be said, the rhythm, the latitude, the contrast, the contradictions, the spaces, the silences, the tone, the style, the attitude, the volume. And suddenly when I arrived at, any art works in an autonomy or in an autonomous way. It's a crisol that is permeated with so many other arts. So it's like a musical partiture, and all those things in a way for me were fascinating, because I was used to shoot small things, but then when you are shooting something like that, pieces, and every of these atoms hits the other atom. I think for me, it was a great exercise to put a big piece together and to the collage to get perspective. So, and I still learning every day.
What you're describing, I know it well, but I tend to just distill until all my films are 83 minutes and a half, whereas you make these expansive films and you carry it off because you're an expansive character.
What I love about your films and the way you work, Paweł, that I don't have that ability and capacity and talent, is that as I told you many times, you said so many things with very minimal elements, and you get to the point because, in a way, I don't know if you have now understand the essence and the molecule and the atom, the atomic force of the essence of something, and in a way, I see you as a very sober and minimalistic artist that contains its own things, and you say a lot with little. So like, and I have to confess that I find myself, and maybe it has to do with my culture.
I mean, you're a generous, open, expansive guy.
No, but I feel that sometimes I'm not minimalistic. I'm maximalistic. You know, I consider myself like really. And again, in our culture, you hear the music, and the emotion is always super profound, and the shouts, and it's noisy, and the food is spicy, and the colors of the pictures are very colorful and intense. It's an intense culture, which in a way I embedded that. And I cannot see myself holding all that to become in that sense, because that's the way I express myself. So, and I recognize that, but I have been learning to balance. But in this first, I think Amores Perros is a maximalistic expression.
Yeah. And I tell you, when I saw you like introduce your film and talk about it, I think in Edinburgh Festival, I said, yeah, this guy is like this film. I didn't know you then, but this guy made this film for sure. And I know it's very often the body language of directors like so expresses their films. It's very curious. But anyway, get back to Amores Perros. I mean, with all this kind of wealth and expressiveness and chaos, it's still a very straightforward morality tale. No, it's a story of many betrayals, and everyone gets punished.
I think there's kind of a current theme in the three stories that, believe it or not, has to do a lot with the absence of fathers. There's no fathers in the history. So the father in the house of Octavio and Ramiro, there's no father. And is the mother trying to get these guys married with this little young girl, and the brothers fighting each other, kind of Cain and Abel. But there's a lack of a father figure that, in a way, put that. In the other story is the same. The father that abandoned the family, and then the girl, the lover, Valeria, which father, in a way, is ashamed of her because she's a model, and this morality. So the lack of father and the abandon of the father. And then the Chivo is this father that abandoned her daughter and the marriage for a political ideology, and he felt betrayed himself of what he did. So I think that is mainly the things that, in a way, runs in the vein of each story that I was very interested to show. And at the same time is this how passional ideological relations or affection, the heart can, in a way, can become very wild and irrational as the dogs, So that's why the name Amores Perros, because in a way, sometimes love can become very animalistic, and irrational and dangerous and even deadly. Many times,
But everyone gets the just deserves in it,
I remember that at that time they were saying that why the violence and the dogs. And I said, I don't like violence that do not have any consequences, because violence has a consequences no matter what. And I'm saying that is good or bad. It's just when you show violence and it's funny to kill somebody and give a gunshot and a smile and give a very clever punchlines, and it's an entertainment tool. I have problems with that, especially because obviously I have lived in a very violent country, which is not fun to watch. And so the irony and things like that, I do not understand. I understand, but I don't like it. Yeah. What I'm saying is, what I wanted to show is that these decisions of these characters, that the decision of Gael or the character Octavio to send to send some people to to kidnap his brother and punch him and all that, and the way he deal with the gangs, all those decisions in a way he paid a price for it. There's a consequence. It's not a punish, but it's inevitable. Let's put it that way. It's an inevitable kind of way he's dealing. The same with El Chivo. He did a decision in his life and has an inevitable lack of relation with the daughter. And the dog that killed El Chivo dogs, I mean, he learned from him because suddenly he saw himself in that dog that has killed brutally his family. He recognized himself saying, I am doing the same. So, I mean, and that's why he stopped doing what it was. In a way, the dog redeemed him, you know.
Yeah. Seeing that film and, you know, being where you are now, coronavirus, isolation, do you look at your work as a kind of journey towards something? How did it give you time to reflect? I mean, your new film is going to be some kind of a personal reflection.
I'm very excited because I am actually 20 years exactly later returning in 2 weeks to Mexico City to start my next film. I haven't shot in Mexico City. I have shot in Mexico, in Babel. I shot in Tijuana and in the border and in Sonora. So I shot like a third in Mexico, but not in Mexico City. So for the first time in 20 years, I would shoot again in my own city. And it's going to be a journey. Things has changed enormously. Not only in the cinema environment and culture. I think now there's incredible amount of great directors and great talent, and a lot of the films are very, you know, I don't know. It has become another thing. The reality of filmmaking in Mexico. It's a lot of. There's like 250 films produced every year. At the time that I did Amores Perros, it was 7 to 9 films produced a year. Now it's 250. So I used to think about. And so it's a very effervescent culture and complicated. And I'm coming back to do a film a little bit about that, about identity and memory, and obviously with humor and candor. And but I think the relation and the point of view is going to be a very lively and very exciting experience for me. So let's see what happens.
Good luck, cabron. Great to see you, man. Take care.
Paweł, thank you very much for doing this, cabron. And I wait for your next film. All right. Well, thank you very much, Paweł.
Pleasure. Good to see you.
Well, see you.